News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Lisa Mateo.
Lisa, the drop in futures on Wall Street follows Friday's big Fed-fueled rally. The Dow Jones Industrial Average begins this week in record territory after Jay Powell used his keynote speech to signal the Fed could cut interest rates as soon as September. Here is Powell in what was likely his final Jackson Hole speech at the helm of the Fed.
Nonetheless, with policy in restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance. Monetary policy is not on a preset course. FOMC members will make these decisions based solely on their assessment of the data and its implications for the economic outlook and the balance of risks.
That was Fed Chair Jay Powell in Jackson Hole. The next FOMC meeting starts September 16th. Traders see an 84% chance of a rate cut.
Well, meanwhile, Nathan, European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde warning against political interference in central banking. Now, she says there's risk of, quote, instability, if not worse, if governments dictate interest rate policy. Lagarde spoke to Fox News.
I think the independence of any central bank is critically important. I think we have to be accountable. We have to report back and to answer all the questions of either Congress in the US or the European Parliament for me. But it's vitally important that central bank is independent.
ECB President Christine Lagarde speaking to Fox News from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Lagarde's remarks come as Fed Chair Jay Powell faces pressure from President Trump to slash rates.
And of course, Lisa, inflation remains in focus with a key report on prices coming at the end of the trading week. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index that excludes food and energy is the Fed's preferred measure of underlying inflation. The report Friday is expected to show it rose 2.9% in July from a year ago. That would be the fastest annual pace in 5 months.
Well, on the equity side, Nathan, the big event comes on Wednesday when Nvidia reports earnings. We get a preview from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Nvidia's China business will be a key theme in its earnings call amid broader concerns about lofty tech valuations. Kara Murphy is Chief Investment Officer at Kestra Investment Management.
What we've seen, especially coming out of second quarter earnings, is that many of those companies continue to deliver, and that's really been able to fuel this momentum. Now, it sort of makes us a bit more cautious going forward because of the very, very high expectations in these names.
Other tech names reporting this week include CrowdStrike, Snowflake, and Dell, also reporting retailers Best Buy and Five Below. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Charlie, thank you. We have a deal to kick off the trading week. Keurig Dr. Pepper has agreed to buy Dutch coffee and tea company JDE Peet for $18.4 billion. Once the deal's completed, Keurig plans to split its coffee business from its other beverage operations just a few years after the deal that combined them.
In Europe, Nathan, shares of Dutch company Orsted fell to the lowest on record. This is after the Trump administration ordered a halt to construction on an almost finished offshore wind farm. Orsted is one of the world's largest offshore wind developers. The order marks a new low point in the company's failed effort to replicate its European business in the American market. Shares are down almost 50% this year, wiping out nearly $8 billion off the company value.
All right, Lisa, let's turn now to the latest developments in efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Vice President J.D. Vance says sanctions against Russia remain on the table as the Trump administration attempts to broker an end to the war. Vance spoke on NBC's Meet the Press.
I think the Russians have made significant concessions to President Trump for the first time in 3.5 years of this conflict. They've actually been willing to be flexible on some of their core demands. They've talked about what would be necessary to end the war. Of course, they haven't been completely there yet, or the war would be over, but we're engaging in this diplomatic process in good faith. We are trying to negotiate as much as we can with both the Russians and the Ukrainians to find a middle ground to stop the killing.
And that was Vice President J.D. Vance on NBC's Meet the Press, which can be heard every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, back here in the U.S., Nathan, President Trump's threat to send National Guard troops to more cities is starting to face pushback from Democrats. Some of the Guard units that have been deployed in Washington, D.C. have begun carrying firearms. And President Trump has said Chicago could be the next to see stepped-up federal law enforcement. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel says this is all about politics.
When you look at what he did in D.C., he's not going to actually deal with crime. This is an attempt to get the goods through customs. This is an attempt to deal with cities that are welcoming cities, known as sanctuary cities, and deal with immigration.
Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel appeared on CNN's State of the Union. President Trump also posted on social media that he's considering sending National Guard to Baltimore after Maryland Governor Wes Moore invited the president to join him on a safety walk through that city. Governor Moore says there are a number of reasons why he opposes sending the Guard to fight crime.
It's deeply disrespectful to the members of the National Guard. You know, as someone who actually deployed overseas and served my country in combat, to ask these men and women to do a job that they're not trained for is just deeply disrespectful.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore was a guest on CBS's Face the Nation, which you can hear every Sunday on Bloomberg Radio.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
I'm Lisa Mateo, and this is Bloomberg.